Greetings, welcome to Soul Horse Sunday. I'm Delia with True North Equestrians, and today we're having another conversation about the role that horses fulfill in our spiritual journey. And my guest today is Fiona Sutton, and I just met her just now on Zoom, but we've been communicating for a while on the internet because of her work and how she relates and how horses have changed her life. So Fiona, I'm going to just let you go ahead and take over and start and introduce yourself and start talk about how that you actually got started on this spiritual journey with horses.
Thank you very much, Delia. It's lovely to be here, and I really thank you for having me on here. My journey started, my journey started when I was born, really. I loved horses from the moment I was born, and I loved animals, but particularly horses. My parents, it was quite weird. I was a bit of a throwback. My parents had never even had a pet. They weren't into animals. None of the family were, none of my grandparents, nobody. It was a completely new thing. And I was just born loving animals, wanting animals in my life, begging for a horse from the moment I could talk. My parents were very anti-horse. My dad saw them as expensive. My mum saw them as dangerous. And I was told I couldn't have riding lessons. I've got to wait till I was about 10. They eventually let me start at about 9 years old. Didn't start off very well, went to a riding school. I think I got thrown off on my second lesson, got booked off. That put me off riding, and I didn't go back there, but I loved just hanging out with horses. And we got horses in the field near to us, and I used to just go over there, hang out with them. Just loved being in their presence. And I did that for about a couple of years. And then I made friends at school with a girl who was also mad on horses. And we started learning to ride at a much better riding school. And it just went from there, really. From then on, the next few years, we spent looking after other people's horses, working in riding schools. And then my parents finally gave up when I was 14 because my sister was also mad on horses. She was 2 years younger than me. My dad recognised it was never going to go away, so he bought us a pony when I was 14. I realised, I think I realised when I was quite young that horses really do have this magical effect on us. I was very shy, very, very shy, very introvert. But when I was around horses, I was really a different person. It was like the horses drew me out. I just loved being around them. And when I was around the horses, I was confident. I'd talk to people. I'd ask if they needed help. You know, I was just this different person. And it went from there, really. And I also realised that horses, every horse I believe that comes into your life has got a lesson for you. So our first pony was very much teaching us about boundaries and sticking up for ourselves. He was leader of the herd, and he actually wanted us to be quite bossy with him and firm with him. And it was only then that he'd have anything to do with us. You know, he was in a 65-acre field. The first summer, we could barely catch him. But the moment we started standing up to him a bit more and being firmer, he was like, oh, I love you after all. And then he'd neigh, come galloping over. And it was interesting because I realised that every horse is an individual. They all need treating totally differently. I mean, how he wanted me to be with him was completely different how my next two horses wanted me to be with them. When I was 21, I bought the horse of my dreams, Tiffany, and we had the most magical relationship from the word go. I mean, I do believe now it was a soul bond without a doubt. We just adored each other from the very first. From the first day she was galloping to me, neighing to me. We had 26 years together. I bought her as an 8-year-old, and we had 26 years of being together and riding together. She was a remarkable horse. I mean, I knew it at the time, but even more so when you look back, she was just incredible. She was the most giving of horses. She just gave her heart and soul. And whereas my first day of pony, I had to be quite bossy with her, you only had to whisper, you only had to think. I actually believe that she was highly telepathic. And there were a few things that happened quite early on that suggested this to me. And one thing in particular, which I could never get over because I wasn't even aware of animal communication, was she was always she was in a field with a lot of other horses, and she was always the bottom of the pecking order. And she, if you called her, she'd come galloping over and come to the gate, but all the other horses chase her off. And there was another gate 50 feet down from that gate, and I said to her the one day, and I can't even believe that I thought this was going to work, but I talked to her like she was a person, and I actually said to her, I'm going to distract all the horses here with food and tidbits. You go down to that gate and I'll run down, open it, and you can just walk into the yard and go into your stable. And she just did it like that, no problem whatsoever. And I'm like, how on earth did that work? And it never, ever failed. That was always how I got her out of the field. From then on, I never once did it fail. So that was just amazing. And then she always knew if we were going a long ride or a short ride, and we always set off up the same lane. And if we were going a short ride, she'd jog from the word go because she loved being ridden. She loved going out exploring, and she'd be so excited. But if we were going a long ride, she'd know, and she'd pace herself and walk, and she'd just walk beautiful the whole way, no silliness, no jogging. And I used to think, how on earth does she know? There were strange things happened over the years. We seem to have this really deep connection. The one significant thing, and I'll just mention it, was when she was 12 years old, so I'd had her 4 years. I was at work and I had this growing sense that something awful was going to happen to her. And I told everybody at work, and as the day went on, I thought, no, something awful was going to happen to Tiffany, and I was getting more and more worked up about it. I rushed out at 5 o'clock. I got home and I said to Mum and Dad, I've got to rush up to my horse. I'll have tea later. There's something up with Tiffany. And I got there and she didn't come when I called, which was highly unusual. And I'm like, oh no, here we go. So I went looking for her and I found her, and she was holding her leg up and her foot was just pumping blood. And it turned out that she'd trodden on something. It had taken half a hoof away. Luckily, I found her because I reckon she could have bled to death. And luckily, there was a woman up there who worked for the PDSA, and she got bandages and everything in her car. So she bandaged it up that well that the vet said, I'm not even going to touch that. We'll just leave it as it is. And he didn't take it off for a day or two. And he said that she was half a millimetre from being lame for life, but she wasn't, and she got through it, and we carried on, and we had up these wonderful years together. But it was when she, on her transition, that 3 amazing, miraculous things happened, and this is what opened me up spiritually. Because although I'd been very, very close to her all these years, I never really thought of it in a spiritual context. I didn't really know much about spirituality. I'd never even heard of Reiki. I only heard of animal communication 6 months before I lost her. And I'd started to get really interested in that. And I don't know whether I was reading all these books on animal communication. I think it opened my heart center a lot. And I think perhaps that's what made me receptive and allowed all these things to happen when Tiffany died. But the things that happened were just amazing. So there were a lot of smaller things that happened, but I'll just stick to the big things. Otherwise, I'll spend the whole hour talking about it. But one of the big things was She was 34. I'd only retired her 3 weeks before I lost her. She was still very energetical. She was in good health, but she'd got a bit of arthritis in a one fetlock joint, and she'd started to feel a bit unsound in trot. So I thought, no, now's the time to retire her. So I'd retired her. And the night before she died, I had a really strange dream, and I've never had it before or since. And in the dream, it was like I was with her, that I spent the night with her, but on a soul level, not a physical level. And it's really hard to describe, because when I woke up, I couldn't really remember the details of the dream. But I said to my husband, I spent the night with my horse on a soul level, and he's like, you're just completely bonkers. It just sounded so crazy. And it was like, all I could remember in the dream was us knowing each other inside out, and like our souls merging. Really, really hard to describe. So I had a sense of that. And then I got up, and my first animal communication had appeared in my inbox. Now, the lady who had asked to do it for me, she was meant to have done it a few weeks before I received it. And for some really strange circumstances, she'd lost it. She said it had like disappeared off a list, and she hadn't done it. So I'd had to remind her of it. And it's so weird that that was the morning I received it. And it was such a beautiful reading. And it left me in no doubt whatsoever that animal communication was a real thing, because in these pages, this woman knew nothing about me. She didn't know me from Adam. All she'd taken was my horse's name and a picture. And our whole life was in those pages. All our adventures together, the amazing bond we'd shared, the high energy she got, the fact that even though she was 34, she was still in really good physical condition. And it was just her. The horse she was describing was her to a T. And it just left me in no doubt, oh my word, this is for real. So before I went up the yard that morning, I was already in a dazed state from the dream and the communication. Everything seemed normal. I fed her, and as I led her up to the field, her back end started to wobble. And I knew that wasn't right, so I called the vet. I put her in the field, and it was like she knew that she was going. She gave a great big neigh to the horse in the field next to her, who was her best friend. She gave a great big neigh to me. She made it very clear that she didn't want me to leave her. She had her head over my shoulder. At one point, I was going to go back to the yard to tell people what was happening and to ask them to send the vet up when she arrived. But she didn't want to leave me. She was pulling me back. She was nickering. She was so clearly saying, you mustn't leave me, you mustn't leave me. So I just couldn't. So I stayed there. We waited about an hour and a half for the vet to come, and it was really strange. She was resting on my shoulder, but every so often she was walking in small circles. It was nickering, but it was her greeting Winnie. And it was like somebody appeared who she was really pleased to see. And then she'd go back and rest on my shoulder again. And then she was walking in small circles and nickering. And I just thought, oh my God, her mom's come for her. That's how it felt intuitively. I thought, her mom's come for her. She's leaving me. I'm saying goodbye. In the dream as well, it was all of it was telling me, she's leaving. And then this went on for about an hour and a half. And then as the vet was walking up the path towards us, she just swirled all the way up to the top of the field in these circles, and then just collapsed in the gateway. Luckily the vet, it was like the timing was perfect. Just as the vet got there, the vet said her heart's given way, so she just speeded up the process. I was in absolute bits, as you can imagine. I was just crying my eyes out, and I just lay.
I was crying hearing about it.
It was very upsetting at the time. And I was just lying with her in the dirt, and I was just thanking her for everything she'd given me and for being this amazing horse. And I actually said to her, if you can give me a sign that you're in a good place when you go, please give me a sign. If it's possible, please give me a sign and let me know. And anyway, I went home. I was in bits. I just cried all day. And I just kept praying. If it's possible, please give me a sign. I just need to know she's in a good place. And then I thought no more. You pray and you ask for these things, but then you just let it go and you don't really expect it to happen. But the next day, somebody had gone away and they'd asked me to exercise their horse for the weekend. And I thought, well, I'll still do it because I need something to take my mind off what's happened. So I rode this horse. My daughter, who was 13 at the time, was on her pony. And my daughter's friend also came with us on her pony. And we went this ride. And when we were coming back, we were riding back along this bridle path. Lauren said to me, look, Mum, look at that sunflower. And there was this beautiful sunflower on this bridle path. And it was really unusual because it was on a stem. The stem was only about a foot and a half. And this beautiful big sunflower. And it was perfect. It didn't have a flaw on it. It didn't have a mark on it. And all I kept saying was, and I was dazed. I wasn't really with it. And all I kept saying was, oh my word, I've never seen a sunflower on a bridle path. I've never seen one that beautiful. And I've never seen one on a short stem like that. And then I thought no more of it. We got back, we rode, and then the next day we rode along the same bridle path, but we came the other way along it. And it was even more amazing because you could see this sunflower some way up the path. And it just looked surreal. And I actually thought to myself, that can't possibly be real. And I was thinking at that point, it must be artificial, it can't be real. But as we rode past, I had a look and you could see it wasn't in a pot. There were all leaves around the base of it. So it did look like it was going into the ground. And again, I was saying the same things. And we came back an hour later and Lauren, my daughter, she said to me, Mom, that sunflower, it's gone. It's not there. And it had just disappeared. And it was then that my brain clicked in because I'd been in this really dazed state. And I thought, hold on a minute, this is the 9th of March. In the UK, you don't get sunflowers in March. You get them in July, you get them in August, but not in March. And temperatures the week before had been -5 at night. So it was absolutely impossible. And I suddenly thought, oh my God, that was my sign. And I just knew it was my sign. And I've always loved sunflowers because I only have to look at a sunflower and they make me happy. They're just so bright and so beautiful. And I thought, oh my word, that is just amazing. She is telling me she's in this beautiful, happy place. And to be honest, over the years, it started to get even more meaning for me because a sunflower is inviting you to turn to the light. And I think it's also the emblem for the spiritual church. I might be wrong, but I think it is. And I think I read somewhere as well, it's a sign that God has heard you. So all these things were coming out. And the spiritual path I was to follow, to me, it was an invitation to that. And over the years, it's really funny because the sunflower always leads me to where I need to be. So if I see a book with a sunflower on, I know that's a book I need to read. I've even picked holiday cottages that I've seen online because I've seen a picture of a sunflower somewhere before I've even looked at the details, and I've booked them and we go, and they're just amazing. So over the years, sometimes have had a lot of meaning for me. So this was amazing that I'd received this sign, but even so, I was still really upset. I was still crying every morning over my breakfast. And it got to the Tuesday, so I'd lost her on the Friday. I'd seen the sunflower on the Saturday and the Sunday. And then on the Tuesday, I had to go up the yard to put my friend's 2 horses out. And the 3 of them, her 2 horses and Tiffany, all used to be in stables next to each other. And they all 3 used to neigh as I walked into the yard. And I was getting really upset that morning, thinking, oh my God, they're going to be neighing to me and Tiffany's neigh isn't going to be there. You know, how am I going to bear it? And I was dreading going up. And I went up and I just had silence. It was the first time ever these horses didn't neigh to me. And it was like they knew that I didn't want to hear them. And I walked into Esther's stable to do her rug. And there was this beautiful thoroughbred next door called Monty. And he used to put his head over the wall. But if you went to stroke him, he'd always retreat to the back of the stable. He was very aloof. But this particular day, and it's the only time that it happened, he started kissing me and licking me all up the neck. And it was so different to what he normally did. And the more I praised him and the more I said, oh, that's really beautiful, Monty, the more he was doing it. And then this sounds really crazy, but I've got to be honest about what I witnessed. He actually took his head away from me and his head was in front of me. And I could see the one eye that was just full of water. And then this trickle started to come down his face. And it was almost like he was crying and he was empathizing with me. And it was at that point I remembered he'd lost his field mate 6 months before. And it was like he was saying, I know what it feels like. I've been through this too. And I really feel sorry for what you're going through. And I'm trying to comfort you. And he started kissing and licking me again on the neck. And then the horse, Esther, whose rug I was doing, suddenly looked at him really quizzically, as if to say, what on earth are you doing? And then she was like, oh, I get it. And then she started doing the same on the other side of my neck. So I got these beautiful horses kissing and licking me. And then we were just in, it's really hard to describe this, but we were just in this bubble of absolute empathy, understanding. And I was just in awe of what I was experiencing. And obviously I'd always loved horses and I'd always felt I had a good understanding with them, but this was on a different level completely. And I just thought, oh my God, how are these horses knowing that I'm in this pain? Not only are they feeling it, but they're responding to it and they're trying to help me. And for 10 minutes, we were in this absolute bliss where they just took me somewhere. And it was almost like we were in a spell together. And then somebody walked in the yard and shouted hello. And we all just jumped apart, like, you know, like a jolt of electricity running through us. But I walked out the stable. And what struck me was I felt completely different. All the pain had gone. It's like they'd sucked all the pain out of me. And I just felt this incredible love and joy and peace. And I thought, what on earth have I got to be sad about? It was almost like I'd lost my horse 10 years before and I'd come to terms with it, but I could see how lucky I'd been to have this horse for 26 years. And in a way, how lucky it was that she'd gone the way she'd gone, because she'd been in such good health right up to the end. She hadn't had to go through any horrible illness. I hadn't had to go through any horrible decisions, whether I put her down or whether not to. It was all taken out of my hands. And I'd been with her at the end and I'd gone through it with her. And I just thought I have so much to be grateful for. And it was just overwhelming, this gratitude I felt. I just felt so overwhelmed with gratitude. And this is where it gets really weird, and I couldn't understand it because that just stayed with me. I just didn't revert back to the sorrow or the loss or anything. Like this joy, this peace, this love, it just stayed with me. And the only way I could describe it to people is saying, like, I felt like I'd been touched by the divine, and through the horses I really felt that I had, that they'd been a conduit. Yeah. And it's so funny how I eventually went on to do Reiki healing, because I really feel that they gave me a Reiki healing. That's how it felt. So that is what woke me up spiritually, and it woke me up in a really big way. And I didn't want another horse for a bit. I didn't want to rush into getting another horse. So I helped somebody on the yard with her horse. And then the time came when I started to get my head around having another horse. And that's when Jazz came into my life. Now, Jazz was a very, very different horse to Tiffany. I feel that my 20s were quite a difficult time. So I had Tiffany when I was 21, and I think my 20s were quite difficult. I had a really bad relationship, and I wasn't enjoying my work. My work was very stressful. I was being bullied a bit at work. So that was all very stressful. And Tiffany, she was like my shining light, and she had this beautiful star on her head. And I always think she shone this light, she shone the way. And she was like this shining light in my life, and she brought so much joy into my life. We just had a ball together. I could do anything with her. We could, we had the most amazing rides. We loved exploring. We both loved exploring. I could trust her with my life. So I feel that she was very much about showing how much of a connection we can have with a horse and how much joy they can give us. Whereas Jazz was much more about teaching. She was my teaching horse, and she was very much going to lead me down the spiritual path. She was quite a complex horse. She was typical thoroughbred in a lot of ways. She was quite highly strung. She'd been a polo horse between the ages of 4 and 6. And I bought her as a 9-year-old. And she was typical, very high-headed, very tense, hollow back. And I just started working her like I had my other horses in the past, and we were doing some schooling, some lunging, some riding, but I just felt we were going backwards, and it all seemed out of alignment. And any lessons with riding teachers, it just felt forced. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel. And her message to me all the time was, we need compromise. She was asking me to form a proper partnership with her. She wanted compromise. Some things were a surprise. So I was thinking at this point, well, we're on this spiritual path. Let's try some natural horsemanship. We started going to somebody's yard once a month. It all seemed great. The horses were kept in herds, that they were all barefoot, they were ridden bitless. It supposedly worked with the best natural horsemanship people in the world. But right from the word go, Jazz, who is very sensitive, just didn't like his energy, and he couldn't seem to see that she was confused by some of the things he was asking. And I was quite shocked that he couldn't really read her energy, and that he couldn't see how sensitive she was. We did carry on with these lessons for a bit. So I think we had about 5 or 6. And I was learning some good exercises, which I was doing with Jazz at home. And she'd work beautifully at home with her. We were doing quite a lot of in-hand work and groundwork. And she'd go beautifully at home. But the moment we got to his place, she'd practice love. The moment he entered the arena, she'd tense up, the adrenaline would start to course through her body, and he was constantly saying she was disrespectful, she wasn't seeing me as a leader. But all I saw was a very confused horse who was, getting upset and not understanding what was being asked of her, and it was making her very panicky. So after about I decided after about 6 sessions, no, it's enough. I can't do this to her anymore. You know, I'm just going to have to work it out myself. Because like I say, at home, she was just working beautifully with me. I managed to find somebody else who saw things the way I did and was really sympathetic and who listened to the horses. And she was a very good rider biomechanics teacher, so she was able to help me a lot with my own riding and my own biomechanics. And she was absolutely great with Jazz, and Jazz actually loved having lessons with her. So she was the first person I found, you know, who she was happy to work with me. And we just carried on doing it. So we did a little bit of riding, we did some in-hand work, groundwork. But the turning point came. So that went on for about 2 or 3 years. And then she started to get very grumpy about being tacked up. And we'd had her physically checked out. We couldn't find anything. She'd started to get really snappy about having the bit put in her mouth. She'd started to get very objectionable about having the saddle put on. In the menage, she was starting to stop and refuse to move, which wasn't like her. And I'm like going, okay. So I was getting into animal communication at this point. I was also becoming Reiki attuned. I think I've become Reiki attuned at level 1. So I'm like, okay, what are you trying to tell me here? And I heard her say, well, this is all wrong. I'm supposed to be here for my mind. You're supposed to be using me for my mind, not my body. I've come here to lead you down the spiritual path. We're not supposed to be doing riding and training. This isn't what we're supposed to do. So I'm like, okay, am I hearing this right? So just to prove to myself, I thought there was a spiritual teacher I knew. She wasn't a horse person, but she wrote a lot for the spiritual magazines. And she'd ask people if they got an animal they could send a picture of, and she was going to read their aura. And if there was a problem with them, she wanted to know what the problem was and if she could work out what it was through their aura. So I sent her a picture of Jazz, and I just said, she doesn't seem to like being ridden. She's stopping. She's not wanting a tack on. And she came back to me and she said, this horse is highly spiritual. She's got a rainbow coloured aura around her. And she wants you to know she's not like a normal horse. She's very different. She's got a special thing she wants to accomplish. She wants to be treated differently to other horses. And she's got a mission she wants to carry out, but she didn't actually say what the mission was. So then I thought, okay, this is tying in with what I'm getting, but I still don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So I got my Reiki teacher to come and speak to her. And my Reiki teacher walked in, and Jazz immediately went into a trance. And she says to me, she wants to channel a book through you. And I was absolutely gobsmacked. Although, to be honest, by this point, I'd experienced quite a lot of otherworldly things. So my mind was pretty open. And I just thought, okay, I've experienced a lot. It's a shock. I wasn't expecting that. But I'm prepared to give it a go. I've been practicing animal communication. I've done some courses in it. I was feeling quite happy and enjoying it. So I thought, well, if I just sit in the stable, have my journal, have my pen, I'll treat it like a normal animal communication. I'll just sit there, see what she wants to say. And it was really funny because when I told my daughter said, I have never heard anything so ridiculous. And Jazz was in the stable and she pinned her ears back and started throwing her head up and down as if to say, how dare you mock me? And Laura was really taken aback and she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Still didn't believe it. But the next day, I went to the stable, pad and pen. I've got no idea. I deliberately didn't think about what we were going to write about or what this book was going to be. I just wanted a complete blank mind. So I sat in there, went into a light trance, said to Jazz, well, okay, what is it you want to write about? And I started hearing this voice in my head. And I can only describe it like dictation. And I put my pen on the paper and I was just writing up this voice. It was like doing dictation. And I did it for about 30 minutes and I didn't pause, non-stop writing. And I'm like, oh, this is working. And from then on, I did it twice a week for about 4 months. And every time was the same. I'd have no idea what we were going to write. I'd just keep a blank mind. I'd hear a voice in my head and I'd just write down. And after about 2 weeks, Jazz, from the moment I put the pen on the paper, I'd said to her, look, this is fine. I think I get this. We've got a soul contract. You want to channel this book through me, but you do need to be kept fit. You need to be kept supple. You know, the riding is good for you. And we'll do it in as much a way we can that we can compromise with each other. You know, I'll do what you want to do, give and take. And from that moment, from the moment I put the pen on, all her grumpiness just went. All just went. And it was for that reason, as well as my daughter could see what was happening. After 2 weeks, my daughter said, okay, I totally believe this now. I can see the change in Jazz and I can see what's happening. She said, I totally believe it. And I wasn't reading back what I was writing, so I didn't really know. I kind of, obviously I was conscious when I could hear this voice in my head, I was conscious of what I was writing, but I wasn't reading it back. But after 4 months, I took it home and I was told, this is the main body of the book, but you've got to pad it out with your own examples and the things you've learned over the years and all the things you've experienced and seen and witnessed. Just got to pad it out. So I took it home and read it, and I was absolutely blown away. Because at that point, I hadn't got any idea. I thought, am I going to read this and it's just going to be complete nonsense? Or, you know, and I read it and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And what she'd basically channeled through me, and I didn't even realise, even when I was writing it, I didn't realise, was what I got is a book with all the roles that the horse takes on. So I've got the spiritual horse, the teaching horse, the riding horse, the sports horse, the social horse, the prey horse, the abused horse, the psychic horse, the healing horse, and all these different roles. And I then spent a few months getting it typing it up, filling it out with my examples. And then I just kind of parked it because this was back in, I think it was back in 2017. So I kind of parked it and I thought, okay, I just need to put that aside. I need to get my website set up. I need to get all these other things in motion. And when the time's right, then I'll publish it. And I think I needed to find an editor as well. And that all happened last year because I had written another book in 2016. But it took me so long to get it on Amazon. I was doing it myself and it was just such hard work. And I thought, I can't go through this again. And this person appeared last year and she loves horses and she's very spiritual. And it's actually a woman on the yard and it's her daughter and she works for Amazon. So she said it's absolutely no problem. She said, this is what I do. I'm an editor for Amazon, and she says, I can get it on Amazon really easily. So hopefully we're almost there with it. It's called A Horse's Voice. And she's hoping to get it out by the end of September, October time. So not too long.
I'm so eager to read it. So eager to read it.
Thank you. So this is the path that Jazz has very much been on, and she, from that moment on, she really did try her hardest for us. And I mean, Laura, my daughter, even did a little bit of like competing with her and took her to clinics, and she was golden. And I used to use Reiki on. I've used Reiki a lot. She responds really well to the Reiki energy. Jazz is a horse. She's very sensitive. You know, she can be opinionated, she can be bossy, but she's incredibly sweet as well. And she's got the most sweet side to her. She can really tune into people. If somebody, so for example, couple of months ago, I was grazing her, and somebody on the yard came over to us and she was crying. And immediately Jazz is up there, attention on her, and it's like Jazz is going, I'm here for you. And I said to this woman, I said, do you want to just hold her for 10 minutes and just have 10 minutes on your own with her? I said, because Jazz is very much a healing horse. This has happened a few times. I said, just have 10 minutes quiet time with Jazz and I'll go away and leave you two together. And I came back after 10 minutes and she said, oh my God, that was just amazing. She said she was with me the whole time and I felt such peace. And I think this is what horses do. And I think this is why we love being around horses, because we just feel this peace, this empathy from them, and they're just amazing. And this is why I love what you're doing, Jalea, because I just want everybody to know about this soulful aspect of the horse and how much they can help us. And, and it's amazing.
Right. As we spoke earlier before we started the recording, horses were beasts of burden, and then they were sport horses, and then we did natural horsemanship. And I do think that the spiritual aspect of the horse is the new frontier that is going to help us. Well, before that, it was therapy horses, but now it's kind of moved into the spiritual aspect that the horse has to contribute to us and to expand our perspective on the life of the horse. I took a couple of notes when you were talking about you had your pony, and until you stepped up and showed up more, you and your sister, he would run and you couldn't catch him. And I think that horses look for our match, and Chant actually does that to me. She makes me be more forceful than I'm comfortable being. But if I don't, she dismisses me.
Yeah.
I've never ridden with a crop, ever, ever, ever. And I have to carry one with her. And I don't do anything with the crop except the same thing I would do with my hand. I tap her on the shoulder. I can do it with my hand and she doesn't listen. But if I have the crop, it's very interesting how that, I don't know if she sees that as me having more authority. I actually can't quite understand that. I don't know why she would make me ride with a crop. But if I don't, sometimes I don't have as much, I don't want to say authority, but I don't have as much influence in how the ride is going to go. And she also loves to go down the trail. She's great. So when you and your sister, but if I don't do that with her, she dismisses me. However, with Mystic, my gray mare, she's hypersensitive, very hypersensitive. And I could never be forceful with her, not ever, ever, ever. So I'm really, really quiet and more laid back with her. So we have to meet the horse at their match level, whatever it is. And it's sad that some people approach every horse the same way, which is a gross trespass. But hopefully, as we become more spiritually involved with our horses, that will change. And there's a lot of people that do meet the horse as an individual. But it's interesting how that some horses will demand that you match them. And it's just as important whether it's they require that you come in with more confidence and boldness, or whether you come in with more sensitivity.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's another thing about, you said touched by divine. It's as though you had been touched by divine when the two horses came in and took care of you after Tiffany had passed. And I thought that was a wonderful statement to acknowledge and to see. So, okay, well, I think that we're probably near the end of our session, but why don't you just go ahead and talk about, give the information as to your website and how people can contact you and what they can expect to find on your website, and then we'll wrap things up.
Yeah, okay, yes. So this path for me, I've tried to be open as to where it's leading me. I think that the spiritual path can look very different for different people. I think we're all meant to go on different paths. We're all meant to do different things. And I think it's because the horses want balance. They want balance in the world. And this is why I love your podcast, because everybody's going into completely different, diverse directions. And it's wonderful because it's bringing in all this balance. And the soulful spiritual path can look so different for different people. So I'd say to anybody listening to this, don't think that it has to look a particular way, because it doesn't. I
Right.
keep mine very traditional. And in the UK, it's a shame, because where I live, a lot of land lost. So we keep horses in a way I don't really like, in small paddocks, stabled at night. I don't like that, but I don't have a choice, because I can't afford my own land. So I have to depend on what's available at livery yards, and this is what they offer. But I found that, you know, it isn't so much about what you do with your horse or how you keep your horse, it's more how you are with your horse. And I'm just saying this for people who are listening, that don't feel you have to be a certain way or do a certain thing, or don't be guilty about the way you have to keep them, because all my horses have been happy, content, really well physically, really well emotionally. You know, that they've all come into their spiritual, their path, their spiritual being. So the path for me, and what it took me down, was animal communication, and Reiki healing. So I became attuned to master level. I love the Reiki with the horses. I think with any animal, because it can get you, it's not so much about, I went into it to help the horses and to help them heal, but in actual fact, I found a lot of healing coming back as well. And I've learned a lot from the animals. They've got a lot to teach us. So I'm very interested in the animal wisdom part of it as well. So my website, and I've only just set it up. I carried out animal communication and Reiki healing for years on a, so I did it mostly for friends and family in return for them donating to animal charities. But I was seeing how much good it was doing and how much benefit it was bringing. So I decided I wanted to set up a business, because ultimately I want to give up my part-time tax job to be able to do this fully. I really want to step into this spiritual arena fully. So I thought I need to set up a business. So I've just set up my website. It's only just been set up, and it's www.unitingsouls.co.uk. And I've also started writing a book this year, and I was directed to do it. And a lot of the stories about Reiki and healing, but also the transformations in some of the animals that I've worked with, but also the lessons that have come back to me, and the wisdom they've passed on. And some of that's through dreams and visions I've had as well. So yeah, I'm hoping to get that out next year and get that published next year. And I've also started a spiritual development group, but obviously that's actually in physical. But I've realised that opening people up to this magic and this way of being, it's good for the animals as well, because, you know, the more we open our heart centres and the more we connect to this higher consciousness, then that's better for the animals too. It's a win-win for everybody.
Yes.
Yes. And if anyone contact me via email, it's fiona.sutton@btinternet.com, btinternet.com. So, oh no, sorry, I've got that wrong. So I've only just
You don't email yourself.
I don't, and I've only just set.
Well, you know, that's no worries, because Fiona, I will put it into the notes, and so they'll be able to actually, I'll get the actual translation from you, the actual address, and I will put it into the notes.
Fantastic.
Okay, well, I want to thank you so much for being here. I love your whole story. I'm you know, what you were saying, we each have a spiritual path. And when I hear stories like this, I'm just jealous and envious, because that wasn't my path. I didn't figure this out until I was a little later in life. And, but that wasn't my path. I had to go through these other rounds to get to the point. Mine has been more of an evolution in how I've related to horses. And I wish that it were different, but apparently that's the way it needed to have been. And so, I want to thank you so much for being here. I love hearing about your relationship with your horses and your abilities with them. and how they relate to you. So thanks for joining us, and I'm Delia with True North Equestrians. If you would like more information about these Soul Horse Sundays, you can visit my website there on the video media page, or you can also check out the Facebook group, True North Equestrians. And thanks for joining us, and we will be back in a week or so with another Soul Horse Sunday. And let me see if I can stop the recording. Okay.